Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Optimizing Mobile App Testing for Speed, Scale, and Coverage. This is part 2 of our mobile testing masterclass. In part 1, we discussed the key considerations and trade-offs when choosing on-premise versus cloud-based testing. We had some of our best SaaS experts joining us on that one. And today we are very excited to take that discussion forward with some real-world case studies and an in-depth product demo. So I'm Ashwini Sathe. I'm a senior group product marketing manager at Sauce Labs. I lead the mobile value stream here and very excited to work alongside some of the best industry's best test experts and glad to be joined by one today. So Max, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maxwell Newsom. Most people call me Max. I'm a solutions engineer here at Sauce Labs. I've been working at Sauce for over 4 years. I support the sales team at Sauce from a technical angle to help understand our customers' state of testing, their desired state, and determine how Sauce can best help to achieve those types of goals.
So what's on agenda today? Today we are going to be discussing some key challenges in the mobile app SDLC, hear a customer story to see how they address the challenges. We'll dive into product tour and share some best practices along the way. And like I said, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So let's begin by looking at some of the key mobile testing challenges that we have gathered from our customers and the market in general, right? So first off, we see that mobile architecture definitely is inherently more complex to build. We're also seeing that when companies are trying to sort of build and maintain their own device and test infrastructure, teams are quickly getting bogged down by the operational burden that this can bring, right? That's taking time away from high-value development work. During the test phase, it was interesting to see some of the studies that we did with especially the tech target group. They validated that really enterprises are testing across 82 different device OS combinations for these releases. Given how fast the OS device landscape is evolving, this just gives us a sense of how much time, full-time resources are really spending on just catching up and supporting these latest devices and OSs, maintaining app version control and ongoing operational work that this entails. Secondly, way too much reliance on functional UI tests is also seen to slow down your pipelines. So considering that breadth of testing types, to expand, in your pipeline is also key to achieving that continuous quality. Another challenge that we constantly hear is about implementing and scaling automation as companies are trying to test across a variety of different platforms and operating systems. During the debug phase, spending too much time on reproducing issues to gather the needed context, determine the criticality and really see how we are going to prioritize those issues is something development and QA teams are spending a lot of time on, right? And fixing issues is only getting costlier as we are moving alongside the SDLC. And the last phase, when your app is really goes into production, companies need to really monitor its health constantly and understand the context of those user issues. And during this stage, especially when there is no right reporting and monitoring mechanism in place, companies are losing that safety net and there's a challenge to really surface some of the most important signals that will help engineers and developers get to the root cause. So all in all, these challenges are really making it hard to verify the functionality that really matters for the customer experience. It's reducing confidence to deploy, and that slow feedback loop across production and pre-production is impacting development velocity. So I thought it would be great to, and also compelling to see how some of our own customers have solved these challenges in the real world. And today we are going to talk about eMoney Advisor, who really scaled their QA program MS growth and solved some of these challenges that we just talked about. So quick profile, eMoney Advisors really offer a robust financial management platform where that is currently being used by 100K plus financial professional today. So that just gives you a sense of the scale that the company operates on today, right? And as they were transitioning to a more remote first company, right, there was very key pain points that their QA teams faced. And the first was really realizing that it was no longer sustainable to sort of procure and maintain their own devices in-house and also ship them to their QA teams in multiple locations, right? eMoney Advisor as a SaaS company also goes through rigorous security audits, and they really needed to find a vendor that could support, have a strong security profile, give them access to private devices in sort of a secure cloud environment, which was very, very critical for them. And in the initial phase, there was also heavy reliance on manual testing, which was really impacting their development velocity. So these challenges were definitely having a broader business impact in terms of, increased risk to the customer experience because the coverage wasn't sufficient. There was high cost of quality with increased overhead. So let's talk about how eMoney really moved towards a solution amidst that rapid growth. So as the company was growing exponentially, they really had to deal with more teams, more use cases, right, in their business. And this required a cultural shift that was really brought about by the QA leaders in the company. And they started to implement agile delivery practices. Now, what that helped the QA team do is really be very well embedded into the workflows of other cross-functional teams who are also responsible for quality, and most importantly, really improve their release quality throughput. They also focused on, shift left testing, which allowed their QA teams to again catch bugs earlier, which saved them a lot of critical hours later in the life cycle. And this also helped them really see like how the ongoing changes are impacting the requirements that they set in place in the early phase. As they started to partner with Sauce Labs during this critical growth phase, they started to see improvements in their quality metrics that really had a positive business impact. So, so a quick summary of how this business impact really, translated was that they saw reduced defects, improved team productivity. They were able to really move from having zero mobile app automation to moving to a really comprehensive automated test suite, and very importantly, increase their coverage both for real and virtual devices. Like they increased their real device coverage by up to 50%, and all of these sort of improvements started to have business impact in terms of continuous improvement in the customer experience, faster time to market, and really high confidence in their releases. So we hope this sort of story also gives you some aspects of how companies are solving their problems in the real world. And I think it's a great time to dive into actual product tour where Max can walk us through how a platform for tests and cloud-based testing can add value in their mobile app testing journey. So Max, take it over from here.
Certainly. Thanks, Ashwini. Nice to see everyone. I already gave you a brief introduction at the top, but once again, I'm Maxwell Newsom. I'm solutions engineer here at Sauce Labs. So today I'm going to do a little bit of role playing. Like, let's say I'm a QA engineer, an automation engineer. I'm responsible for testing my app's core functionalities through smoke testing, regression testing. My responsibilities can include ensuring feature requirements are met while the digital experience we're delivering remains bug-free. And let's say that I'm setting out to test a new build and I have a limited set of devices at my disposal for testing purposes. But in our last release, maybe a bug surfaced and it only surfaced on Samsung devices running the previous OS. Wouldn't it be great if I could go through all of my automated and manual tests on all the form factors that I expect my customers to actually use my app with, right? So that's a bit of level setting of kind of the mentality of what I'm going to be playing today. Let's talk about optimizing efficiency using a cloud provider like Sauce Labs. So if my automation is running on devices that are plugged into my computer or something, then they're going to be running serially and on a limited set of devices, right? So as a QA automation engineer, I can think my Selenium web tests are able to execute in parallel. So wouldn't it be great if all my mobile tests could also run in parallel and on a breadth of devices? And so when we jump over into the Sauce Labs dashboard, we can get a look at how myriad the device set actually is, including all the device types that I expect my customers to use. So if we think back to my position as a QA engineer, in our last release, there was a bug on Samsung devices running the previous version of Android. So I can really easily just filter these down to exactly what I'm looking for here. So previous version of Android, and let's scroll down to only show Samsung devices. And so here I can filter down to represent all the devices of my desired device type. So the real device cloud comes in two flavors. So when we're talking about real device cloud, we're talking about both the public real device cloud, which is largely what you're seeing here with this breadth of devices, and our private real device cloud, which are represented by some of these up at the top. You can think of public as assisting you with breadth, while private can assist you with depth. Public devices are largely like a library. You can choose as many devices as your concurrency allows. So in my case, that's 10. That means I can use up to 10 devices at any given time. Once a test completes, then the device goes back into the pool of devices. It gets cleaned. All of the data that you added to it in your app gets removed, and then you can go and select a new device. Private devices, on the other hand, are devices that we procure for you and only your organization. And since they're private, you can have some additional flexibility, like modifying parts of the cleaning process so that you can log into, say, iCloud and have that login persist. Maybe you want your application to persist on the device and never get wiped. We can also do things like adding SIM cards to private devices for just additional functionality there. Outside of real device testing, you can also leverage our virtual device cloud for emulators and simulators. These tend to be leveraged when you need a lot of scale and fast feedback for automation. So a lot of our mature customers are using a combination of all of these aspects. So at the end of the day, Sauce Labs is providing a robust infrastructure to meet all of these requirements, so you don't have to build and maintain one for yourselves. I'm sure many of you here attended the session with Diego and Marcus, where they went through the difficulties of building a device cloud yourself, right? So when it comes to automation, I only need to make a few changes to point my tests from local to Sauce Labs. And better yet, I can even use the platform configurator here to kind of help me with a quick start of sorts. So there are only a few things I need to do. I firstly need to upload my application into app management here. So you can either do that through the UI or you can programmatically do that using an API call. But yeah, upload your APK and IPA file to here, and then go over to your automation. And the only changes you need to make are to Appium app, where you're going to be setting this to storage file name and adding your application here. Set the appropriate device name is something that you should do. But the other requirements are passing your username and access key and pointing your tests at our infrastructure's endpoint. So really, it's just changing Appium app, passing a username and access key, and pointing your test at this endpoint here. And if we look at this example here, we can see a couple things that I'm doing. This is a WebDriver IO example. I'm using dynamic allocation in this test to select any Samsung Galaxy S device as well as any Google Pixel device. And I'm setting my max instances here to 10. So I'm not sure if there are any Appium users who are specifically using WebDriver IO, but this is an example of what that could look like. So that when I run this configuration, up to 10 tests are going to be able to run in parallel all across these specific device types, right? And we can see that spinning up in my terminal here. And when I go over into the Sauce Labs dashboard, we should be able to see those spinning up as well. So at this point in the demo, I'd like to emphasize that we are not just an infrastructure to run tests on, right? So after every single test that runs on Sauce Labs, you're going to get a number of different assets to review. So with each of these test results, you're always going to get a video of the test that went down. You're also going to get a rundown of every single one of the commands that you were sending using your framework, using Appium in this case, as well as a number of different logs. So you get the device logs, in addition to, of course, the Appium log, a log of all the different commands that you're seeing over here on the left as well. And something that customers find to be really valuable is some network information in the form of a HAR file as well. So these are things that we can automatically capture for you for your review in all of your test results. All of these different assets are also downloadable either just directly through the UI, so you can just download it directly from here. But anything like this, you can programmatically pull as well. We have a robust set of REST APIs and good documentation on that. So if you want to pull any of these assets as part of a pipeline or something, you're certainly welcome to do so. Some additional things that we offer are things like some performance metrics as well, specifically with respect to CPU performance, memory, UI responsiveness as well. And these visuals are all set up with respect to time as well, so you can reference it and cross-reference it, I should say, with the video provided and the commands over here. So if you see a spike in UI responsiveness or something, then you can go to that timestamp and see what type of command is causing that kind of spike to happen. So as I want to continue on the theme of value added beyond infrastructure, I want to also talk about some other macro types of data that we capture. So far, we've only been looking at test results in an individual sense, but as I scale out my tests, it's crucial, for example, to know how my application is performing across different environments. And so I can see, for instance, how many of my tests are consistently passing or failing, sure, but also I can see what the difference in my failure rates are across different types of environments. So if I see that I have a different failure rate on iOS than Android, that's definitely something that I want to keep in mind as an automation engineer. I can also break this down by devices as well. So really the point that I'm honing in here on is that, not just an infrastructure to run tests against, we're providing a lot of added value here as far as insights are concerned. Each of these tabs are going to give you really interesting different views into your overall trends of testing, from failures to pass rates, different things like that. Now, on that note, I want to imagine that I'm scaling out my mobile tests really tremendously on Sauce. And in my thousands of test results, there's a portion of my tests that are either failing or erroring. If I jump into failure analysis, which is what I just jumped into here, I can find some commonalities in my failures and find a root cause. So in this case, I can see I have a failure pattern related to this element is not able to be found for some reason. This element with this value here, I can actually jump over into this test and see exactly what, how I'm identifying that element here, and that's consistent with what I see over in failure analysis. But if I click into this test, that's going to jump right to where that failure pattern is happening. I can click into this, I can see the same information here, this value, there's something wrong there, right? And as the QA automation engineer, I know I'm trying to target this element here. What I can do directly from this page is jump into a live session. Live just means manual test for us here at Sauce Labs. Anywhere you see live test, we're talking about manual testing. So I'm just going to launch this application on a device directly from that failed test result. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to investigate what's going on with this element here. So I'm going to start Appium Inspector. It's going to create a snapshot of the DOM layout of my application here. And I can hone in on what exactly is going on there. So if I click on this, I can see the accessibility ID is what I've been using in my tests. And I can see that this is the value that I should be looking for. It looks like it has an S at the end. I don't think I was using that in my test. And indeed, I can see that I was not. So it's a really simple change that happened in this build. Now, so directly from failure analysis, jumping into a test result, jumping into a live test, I was able to quickly discover that one of my element locators has changed, and that's what's causing my test to fail. So it's not a problem with my application. It's a problem with my test, right? So this type of issue is actually extraordinarily common. It tends to take a tremendous amount of engineering hours to discover, while it should be a pretty benign issue, should be a really simple one to resolve. So at Sauce Labs, we like to provide you with all the tools to be able to resolve simple issues like that, so that you can really hone in on what the problems are when you're really scaling this out. So it's not finding a needle in a haystack, right? So I'm going to go ahead and end that test. One final thing that I'd like to also end on, Sauce Labs is committed to the concept of monitoring quality at all points in the software development lifecycle. So you might think of terms like shifting left, shifting right. So in our core platform, which we've seen today, notice that if my application crashes during a test, it's automatically going to get flagged with this. And I'm automatically going to get access to a stack trace or a crash log, right? So this type of information is typically something that developers are able to monitor on their tests, or sorry, not tests, on their application in production. And Sauce Labs is able to kind of put a lot of those pieces together. Getting this type of information in the testing phase is great, but it's even better to cross-reference this type of data and info with what's happening in production, shifting right? So my crash log here is actually attached to our Sauce error and crash reporting tool, formerly known as Backtrace. So in an ideal state where our portfolio of extensive products are all speaking to each other, you can truly have continuous insight into the quality of your application from test all the way to production. So what we're seeing here is a monitoring tool for apps in production and in test. So you'd truly be able to cross-reference all the crash behavior and the error behavior in production with what you're seeing in test as well. Thereby, breaking down silos, allowing QA to truly collaborate with developers in a meaningful way so that you can deliver these experiences faster with greater confidence. And that more or less concludes what I wanted to show you guys today. So Ashwini, if you want to bring this over to the what's next slide. Yeah.
So Max already gave a wonderful demo here, but if you want to dive into specific aspects of the product and know more, you can definitely book time with an expert. There's a QR code that you can see on your screen. So if you scan that and book that meeting, we'll make sure, our experts are in touch with you. So please go ahead and do that. And I think with that, we are good to head into the Q&A. A few questions that have come in, Max. So I'll just ask them one by one. The first is around how are you seeing MUSIM and real devices being incorporated in your customers' mobile app testing journey?
So typically we see emulators and simulators being leveraged for a different purpose. It's largely for scale. So what I tend to see in my customers is they'll leverage emulators and simulators kind of earlier in the development pipeline. So I often see it like used on merge requests. So if you have a pipeline where there's a merge request and that's kicking off a bunch of UI tests, and say you want to run 100 of them all at the same time, it's really beneficial to use emulators and simulators for that so you can get really fast feedback. It's better to use real devices to ensure more confidence right before production, right? So you can think of real devices as giving you the confidence, and emulators and simulators giving you fast feedback for a really intense scale, right?
So MSIM for scale and coverage and real devices for that precision and accuracy for sure. Another question is around during native app testing, do we have any possibility to switch between environments? For example, prod to staging through bypassing VPN.
Different environments, meaning, I'm sorry, could you just give me a little more clarity on what's being asked here? Builds?
They're asking to a possibility to switch between environments. Yeah, probably prod to staging is what has been mentioned in the question here.
Okay, so the quick answer is yes. So if you are uploading your application into Sauce Labs here, you can upload multiple versions of an app, right? From within the same test, you can switch between different versions. So you don't have to completely end a session to just like switch between versions of an application. Yeah, and directly we can see it from here. So switch app version. If I had multiple versions uploaded into Sauce, then I'd be able to switch between them.
I hope that answers the question. We'll take another one. Is it normal for automated tests to fail due to the session being terminated or not started? The same test passes 90% of the executions and they are using WebDriver IO.
Normal for a test to randomly
Automated to
fail?
fail, yeah, due to session being terminated or not started, but they are seeing the same test pass around 90% of the execution. So I think they're trying to understand the reason for test failures here.
If it's passing 90% of the time or 90+% of the time and only rarely failing because of a test session not being started up, I think we would need a little bit more information to dive deep into that specific issue. But off the top of my head, what that sounds like to me is an issue with not having enough concurrency. So if I have like a manual tester on a different team who's like poking around and manually testing, and then say I have my max instances set to 10, then I'm going to get a failure because I'm trying to kick off 10 tests while one of them's already used up. So it could be something just as simple as that. But yeah, if that's an issue that is like plaguing your test coverage in some serious way, I would recommend opening up a support ticket so we could look into it a little bit more thoroughly.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Yes. Another one is around why can I only see the videos, logs, and metadata tabs on the test result execution? Probably the question is around why it's only these things that are displayed on the test result execution. But Max, I know we already talked about insights and other sort of aspects that are available to customers to view. So maybe you can just give a quick walkthrough of what all is available at their disposal.
Sure. Yeah. So you should be able to get the video, all of these different logs, the commands, like lots of different things at the test result level. But then on top of that, you can get a more macro view when you jump into the insights tab here. A lot of these views are also able to jump back into the granular. So in that example I was showing before with failure analysis, for example, if I'm viewing this by like failure patterns, I can see I have this failure pattern that's plaguing some of my tests. So this is kind of the macro view here, but I can just jump right into this and jump right into the test result itself. I hope we're providing clarity on the question. It's also worth noting that some of these things that we capture have to be enabled through app management. So from here, there are a few things to keep in mind. So that network har file that I was talking about before, that's automatically captured if you have this instrumentation setting switched to on. Beyond that, there's nothing else that you have to do. It's really as simple as that. But if this is set to off, then you're not going to get that asset in your test results. This is also where you can enable things like camera image injection and biometrics interception if you have tests that are covering those types of use cases or user flows, I should say.
Yeah, that's a great overview. There are a few more that are coming in, so let's pick a few again. Any accessibility testing available, something like voiceover?
So we do offer support for voiceover and talkback out of the box. But when it comes to being really thorough with your accessibility testing, we recommend working with one of our partners. A lot of accessibility testing is going to be supported when you're testing on real devices, but the actual technology that goes into thoroughly testing those types of things are best used with companies like DQ, who we have a great relationship with, or you may know of Evinced as well. They're all kind of like the front runners when it comes to like how to do this accessibility testing and getting thorough reports for that. You can use those tools on Sauce Labs devices as well. If you'd like to get an introduction to any folks from over there, you can also talk with one of us too. We do have a close relationship with both of those companies.
There's a question from Pratik, which says, any specific reason to use WebDriver IO in this demo that you provided? Is it associated with performance?
It's not associated with performance. I didn't arbitrarily choose it. I shouldn't say that, but it's just an example of a really popular framework that people use. The underlying technology under the hood is just Appium and Selenium. I think WebDriver IO is especially powerful for people who are both testing web apps and mobile apps, because you can use WebDriver IO for both. If you're familiar with using JavaScript, I think it's a really solid framework, and it's open source, but you may have noticed also another one of my examples was this is like a Java example that I was showing before, where I was troubleshooting this specific accessibility ID piece. So yeah, I showed two frameworks. I was focusing primarily on WebDriver IO because that's one that I see a lot. Java and JavaScript are two languages that I come across most frequently, I'd say. WebDriver IO, I think it's a great framework, especially if you're testing for both web and mobile, because it can handle both.
I also see questions around what about visual testing on mobile devices. So we can definitely let everyone know that that's something in the works, and you should start to hear more communication around how we are going to support visual for native mobile around the next few months. And so please look forward to those sort of messaging from us.
Yeah.
There is lots of questions. So thank you for engaging with us. One is around, does Sauce Lab provide any solution for use case where app requires photo or ID and selfie of user? I don't know. This is something.
So selfie of user, I'm not quite sure, but if you have an application that's responding to an image, right? Like say like a QR code or like a scanning of an ID, perhaps you can use camera image injection to do that. So yeah, like our devices are in, it's in a data center, right? It's in a dark room. So you can't really use the camera itself to support this kind of thing. So you can use camera image injection in lieu of that. So if you have the image of like the QR code or the ID or whatever it is on your local machine, then you can inject that into the device while you're running the test, either in a manual session, or we also support that for automated testing as well.
Let's take the last one here. It's around, is it possible to increase the session timeout to more than 90 seconds to prevent session not found exceptions during, test execution, basically?
The quick answer is yes. There is a limit to how high that is. So it's certainly in our docs somewhere. That's definitely public information. But yeah, there should be an Appium capability that you can set that increases the idle timeout time and things like that. But yeah, we necessarily kind of have to implement like automatic timeouts for certain things to avoid people having like a session that just lasts forever, right? But yeah, you're able to modify that.
And we can definitely follow up with some specific documentation links so that they can find answer to these questions. Honestly, there are more questions, a few more out there. I think we are doing good on time. So Max, if you're good, maybe we can do a couple more.
Yeah, I can do a couple more.
There's a question around what are the best reporting analysis we can use for test run?
Let's see. Well, I guess I'm not fully sure how to answer that question. On the Sauce Labs side, we provide you with a lot of data in a raw sense and also in a visual sense. So we like compile all that data and make it visually accessible to you. So if you have like a different tool, like I believe like TestRail might be an example, that's able to, take JSON data and visualize it for you in a way that's like more standardized across your organization. You can certainly still make use of all the data that Sauce Labs is generating and creating. Beyond that, it's really using the insights tabs that we provide for you, right? So either making use of the raw data or making use of our compilation of that data. There are tools out there that are able to make use of the raw data that you feed to it. But I can only really fluently speak to what it is that we are offering here in the Insights tabs.
Thank you, Max, for that. Any sensor instrumentation features available to test biometric?
Yes. So that is one of the instrumentation features. If we click into app management, that's where you're able to enable that. So from here, biometrics interception, that's where you'd be able to do this. You can also set some of these with an Appium capability. So if you wanted to do that, it's part of like an automated test. You could do it that way too. Or you can just set the setting directly from this page in app management.
All right. That's amazing. Thank you for answering all those questions. I think that's all the time we have for today's webinar. And on behalf of Sauce Labs, we'd like to thank you all for the amazing attendance and participation, engagement, questions that we saw today. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you.